Hello everyone, I'm Justice Graves and I am currently running to be a member of the Narragansett Regional School Committee here in Templeton, Massachusetts. And today the topic is going to be critical race theory is a poor example of leadership and that it ruins teams. This is going to go under the category of racial stereotyping and scapegoating and compelled speech here on this channel, on this campaign channel. Again, videos under this category typically are not going to be for people under the age of 18, people under the age of majority. This is to inform parents, administrators, different people in the community, and other interested parties who may be interested in what I am talking about. And if you have not seen the first video that I have done on this, or if you have not gone through some of the playlist, some of the items that I'm going to be talking about in this video are in there. The first video in this playlist is titled White Supremacy Conditioning in Andover, and the second one is that what critical race theory is harassment is bullying. And so I just want to do a quick review of that. Before we begin, let me just set this up. Alright, critical race theory is poor leadership and ruins teams. We are going to talk about that today. Again, phase 1, gaslighting. Phase 2, the normalization of abuse. Phase 3, you're actually doing it. You complete the self-fulfilling prophecy, all while destroying your own inner trust, your own inner psychological safety, your own inner will. All of that happening between the 3 phases within the foundation. This is talked about in the first video. This is also talked about in the first video. We have not gotten to this yet, so again, I'm not talking about the untouchables yet, because where this material shows up is where the quote-unquote controversial part is, because you may hear the titles of people who are pushing this and think, no, like that was a great book. You might think, no, what that university is doing is great. No, what that program is doing is great. What I'm establishing here with these videos, and there's going to be another video on this afterwards, it's going to be released on the same day, is that you shouldn't be, just because you have a positive reflection on something, a positive connotation of what somebody is doing, what somebody has set up as the ideal, doesn't mean it's the ideal. And what I'm trying to help you to understand is, if you've accidentally fallen down this rabbit hole of believing what these types of people say and possibly getting to the point of almost enacting racism even though you don't personally realize it, I'm trying to tell you that there's a way to back up from it and for you to understand that there is a lot of agreement that what's going on is wrong, and you need to be able to self-identify this situation. So we're going to talk about the leadership. We're not going to talk about the leadership. I promise that we might in the next video. We're not going to talk about it in this video. We're not going to talk about it in the next video. It's going to be in the video after that. I just want to stress that. Again, we broke down one of the common diversity sort of images, cycles, different graphics that they use. We talked about that in the last video, how this is related to the foundation. You start with your, marinating with racism, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the whole shebang. So go back and listen to that talk. I just want to remind you of that. And remind you how in the last video we talked about how this is the same thing as the bully, the bully victim cycle. Again, I'm just going to leave this here so that you can look at it. But I want to talk about another cycle. We're going to talk about not the cycle, but the practices. Now, this is not a cycle. It looks like a cycle. It's a graphic, and it looks like it goes in a cycle. It's not really a cycle. These are practices. And I want to establish very quickly that these two things are not the same. This is not a cycle. These are practices of leadership. This is a cycle of anti-racism that doesn't solve anything, and they tell you it doesn't solve anything. Again, these diversity and inclusion trainers, they don't teach anything helpful. And any of these programs that tell you that the work will never be done, they don't tell you what the work is, it's just, you're just hurting yourself. You're not helping anyone. It's not actually concrete. But leadership, quality leadership, which is something that so here's a little bit of background. When I was at college, I got into this honor society called Omicron Delta Kappa. No, it's not a fraternity or a sorority. It's an honor society, and it is the Leadership Honor Society. And in it, we talked about actually modeling in our own individual academic platforms, because everyone was a different major, how to actually inspire and talk to other people, how to actually be a proper leader. And that was something that I went through. I, helped organize a strengths assessment, blah, blah, blah. Not the purpose of this video to talk about myself. Let's just go back to this, but just to give you a background. So there are these practices. These are not a cycle. They just happen to be this way. There's other graphics that show it a little bit better, and I'll show you in just a second. It's a little bit blurry, but anyway. Modeling the way, inspiring a shared vision. You got to challenge the process, enable others to act, and encouraging the heart. This is part of a leadership this is part of one of the decent ones that I've read and that actually I went through. It's called the Student Leadership Challenge, and because I like to talk about how I like to solve issues and not continue problems, what I'm going to do starting after this video is I'm going to do videos on the Student Leadership Challenge and actually modeling the way of leadership, which is anti-critical race theory and modern white supremacy training. Because instead of focusing on a diversity initiative, what I hope you gain from this talk that I'm going to go through here is that you can get diversity and inclusion if you just model good leadership practices. I don't know how to say it any other way. If you actually go through the Student Leadership Challenge, and if you actually go through quality leadership practices and actually act in that way, diversity and inclusion naturally flow in. You'll naturally have those conversations, they'll happen. And instead of going into this really vicious cycle where they talk about the goals, but they never get to the goals. They tell you that you have to do the work, but you never finish the work. You actually get to do work. You actually get to have a goal, and you get to go towards that goal. Whatever that may be, any category. We're not just talking about the issues of, race in America. We're talking about, actual concrete goals and strategies versus, for example, challenging the process, as a quick overview, means you have to talk with your teammates and listen to them. Also, with Encourage the Heart, you got to listen to people. But this is just talking. You're talking, and then you're focusing on an issue. Does that really help teamwork if you're just talking? Because I could just talk to people all day. But is that really conducive to a team atmosphere? I could just join a debate club. I can debate any topic that I want. But does that really fix anything? Really think about it with me here. Does debate club really change anyone's mind? Does just talking about a problem ever fix it? Come on. Some of you probably are parents who have coworkers. You go to work, you go back and forth, blah, blah, blah. You've been, and even, with the pandemic and everything, I'm sure we can remember of a time that is not pandemic related, or even during the pandemic. If you just talk with your coworkers about something, just a conversation, does that actually get the job done? Or are you just dancing around a subject? Let's get real here. And I don't mean to talk in such blatant terms, but this is just the ultimate reality of the situation. Does just focusing on something, you talk about it and then you focus on it. What are you talking about? What, again, if we go back to, the first conversation, not first conversation, but the first sort of in-depth view of this modern white supremacy in the first video that I did, Kate Slater, she's, an anti-racist scholar, but she can't tell you how to fix anything. She talks about you gotta do the work. She talks about how you gotta get comfortable. She talks about all these things that are in this little graphic. There's no focus on anything concrete, which is something we talked about again in the last video with the discussion on cycles. This isn't a cycle. These are practices, these are steps, and we're going to quickly go through them. And in this book, in the Student Leadership Challenge, there are 10 commitments, within the 5 practices. Each of them have commitments, and each of them you have to model different behaviors to get there. And this is just a sort of preview that will be discussed in the coming videos. But I'm going to go through each of what the different 5 practices are very quickly and tell you how are these practices in actual proper leadership, not critical race theory, not modern white supremacy. Well, here's the first one. Modeling the way, essentially, we're talking about self-esteem and confidence, which is about how you can help yourself first, others second, and you have to find what you value in life. It doesn't mean you have to act on what you value in life, but you have to figure that out. Or you at least have to be content with something. You have to be content with yourself. In critical race theory, you blame everyone, but you pretty much either blame yourself and then you blame everybody else for your problems. Kate Slater, going back to that, horrible diversity training, she talks about how she's a problem, how she has, thoughts of racism, blah, blah, blah. But she can't, exhibit any self-responsibility. Instead, what she does is she blames her parents, she blames the area she lived in, she blames everything other than herself for her current racist behavior. It's not past racist behavior she's talking about in the video, it's her current racist behavior. And that's really important to understand. Developing future goals, inspiring a shared vision. How is this not critical race theory? It's about thinking about the future, creating concrete goals and plans that can be achieved. Think of the SMART model. And this is a second, sort of deviation in sort of what I'm talking about. Back when I was first semester in college, I took this class because I thought I was going to go for my teaching license. I did not go for my teaching license. Why? Because my classes interfered with every class that I needed to take for that. Because, computer engineering, hopefully that's self-explanatory as a difficult engineering field. But when I was in that one class that I got to take on teaching, I had to make 2 lesson plans. I had to do 3 observations, 2 lessons. And on the 2 lessons that I had to teach to, I believe they were 5th graders, 4 for 5th graders, that was what our assignments were. I actually whole shebang, went down to one of the little elementary schools, the whole thing. And this is why we're talking about future goals. This is why I want to tie it all in, because one of the first things that you learn as a teacher, at least now, is that your goals, in terms of what your lessons are, have to be specific. You got to be measurable, attainable, realistic, and they have to be time-bound. And critical race theory actually teaches, when it comes to this last issue, that being on time or setting dates is white supremacy. So they're trying to undermine the SMART goals. So if you're a teacher, you inherently can't support critical race theory because it undermines your ability to teach automatically. And again, it's not about unachievable goals. I'm going to just flash this on the screen real quick. SMART goals. Okay? It's part of leadership. It's basic. It's not even part of leadership. It's just basic ability to communicate and to have teamwork. Leadership, this whole book, you can talk about it in terms of it's a leadership initiative. It's not. This is about teamwork. When you have proper teamwork, you don't have these problems. You don't have people who can abuse diversity and inclusion, like people like Kate Slater and these other people I'll talk about, who can walk in and just spread racism around and call it diversity and inclusion, who can manipulate and who can take advantage of a very specific field. And this is really important. If there's anything you can take away from me, it's that. Creating opportunities, challenging the process. When you challenge the process, it is about challenging yourself and your team, and it is about creating manageable opportunities. Manageable. You got to be able to actually do them and not hurt yourself, that benefit both you and others. It's not about destruction, self-destruction. It's not about self-victimization. We're talking about the bully-victim cycle again. And it's not about harassment because of outcomes. Just because an outcome doesn't look fair does not mean you get to harass people. But critical race theory teaches that. We've been over this. The bully feels bad about themselves. Their state in life is not good. What do? They hurt someone. What happens when they hurt someone? They feel good. They feel empowered. Then that power feels bad, and then they go through the process again. And then 4 is cooperation. You have to enable others to act. How is this not critical race theory? It is about creating a space. We're not talking safe spaces. We are talking about creating just a normal space for others to express themselves without limiting discussion, appropriate discussion, and without encouraging bad behavior. It's not about scapegoating an entire race to evade responsibility for one's actions. Kate Slater basically just blames all white people for her problems. She blames her family. She blames the white community she grew up in. She blames everyone but herself. I'm sorry, but if you were doing something racist, that's on you. It's not on me. It's on you. Figure out what's wrong with your outlook on life, because the rest of us aren't having this problem. We understand that we understand that there are bad people. And what I understand is that Kate Slater is one of those bad people. And just because she says that she's teaching something does not mean she has good intentions. And this is really important. Intention matters. Context matters. And in the context of that horrible incident, not incident, but experiment in Andover, that is what happened. And we need to actually state that. I know I'm overstating a lot in this video about the first video, but this is really important to hammer home how this is bad, how this isn't good for children. Do you think if you teach the opposite of everything that I'm talking about, in terms of self-esteem, developing future goals, creating opportunities, cooperation, and now the last one, listening to your team. If you teach your students the opposite of that, do you think that's good? If you tell your students that, your race allows you to just get away with things, if you're telling, for example, maybe, a white student population, well, your population is just going to do bad things anyway, so let's teach you all the bad things. Who benefits? Society does not benefit. Your students do not benefit. They go and they do bad things. Why are we saying these things? Listening to your team. It is about supporting your team and community. It's not necessarily about activism. And it's not about you. It's not about you doing the work or another vague concept. And it's not about forcing other people to do the work. And it's not always about being right. When you're listening to your team, you might not be right. You might be leading them, and you might be leading them into an early grave. I mean, that's just the reality. And you will disagree with people. That's just how this works. I just want to rewrap through this. What are common key phrases that these critical race theory teachers do? What do they teach children? What do they say about themselves? Well, this is what the critical race theorists say about themselves. They say that they are racist, so believe them. They say they have racist thoughts, believe them. They say that they are teaching materials that perpetuate white supremacy. Believe them. They contribute to racism. Believe them. They talk about how their skin color is the most important part about who they are. Believe them. And then this is the other thing, common scapegoating phrases. This was part of phase 3, the phase 3 slide, if we go back to the first video I did on this. But for example, white women's tears. It's not appropriate. Black bodies, very dehumanizing. Saying that Asians are white is racist. And these are the things that they're actually teaching in schools right now. That every issue in society is because of race. Not other issues, just everything is because of race. They encourage that, they're basically saying that if students are on time, again, which undermines any SMART objectives that you have, is a form of white supremacy. That's racist. To say that about black people that show up on time, that they're exercising white supremacy. I would think that would be a very racist concept, but that's difficult for some people, apparently. And that white people have power, and so they have to give it to... Basically, what this last statement is saying is that only white people have power, and that when you are only a white person that has, that black people can't get ahead, which I think is the most racist thing to say. If you were to re-summarize this, they say this whole line to make it sound nice and pretty, but what they're basically saying here is that, what they're telling students is black students can't get ahead, which I think is abominable and racist. So why are we letting this get to this point? I don't know why, but I know this video is going a little bit over 20 minutes. That is perfectly fine for the purposes of this. I'm going to switch out, but I am going to start doing videos on leadership practices, because I think that is important, because that is more significant, I think, than the very corrupt diversity practices that we have been talking about, that I've been talking about are a problem, because they are, weak foundations have been set up for diversity initiatives, so they are prone to being infiltrated by this evil modern white supremacy. I don't know what else you want me to call it. In the next video, I'm going to do a reading of an article from somebody who is actually, and there's actually something that I agree with that she says that I would like to advocate for on the state level if I am on the school committee, but I'll probably advocate for anyway, about English language learners. There's something that she talks about, but she's running specifically because her area school district is basically now teaching critical race theory to students, and it's disempowered her young black children, and she's very upset about it. So that's why she's running for her school committee, because she wants to be a better advocate for English language learners, and because she wants to empower black people, not tear them down. And when I read that article, which will be in the video immediately preceding this, I'm going to try and release them both at the same time, you will understand intimately. You'll see the connections immediately with what I've been talking about and how it is being applied in the classroom, in this Illinois classroom. And then we're going to try and bring it back over the next few videos to where is this academic stuff coming from, because we all know it's coming from somewhere. Someone didn't just make up, people wrote books and came up with ideas and taught teachers this, and now teachers are teaching this to children. It's how it works. So we're going to talk about that, and then we'll actually get more into the sex stereotyping stuff, because we haven't gotten into that yet. If you wanted to just summarize the sex stereotyping stuff, just replace every conversation we've had with, anything to do with sex or gender, and bada bing, bada boom, it's basically the same thing. Sexism, it's homophobia, it's transphobia. You get the entire idea at this point. This is not easy. This is not difficult. If this can be bullying, then this can be sexism, and this can be transphobia, and it can be homophobia, and it can be racism. It can be all these things, and it can be harassment. This is all the same cycle. It truly is. It's just a nasty, evil thing. And I don't know why more people aren't advocating against this. So I'm going to do conversations about leadership, talking about how you don't need a diversity program. What you need is good teamwork, cooperation, and expression, self-expression within your groups. You got to develop that, and that is it. I know this it's almost 25 minutes. It's almost a 25-minute long video, but I hope that this was important, and I hope that you listen to the next one after this. And I just want to say thank you. Like and share this if you think this was a worthy discussion, and I will hopefully hear your comments. Thank you.